Okay, last week we started a controversial conversation, and it has to do with the seizure of assets from people by police, by sheriffs, by whoever the authorities are, the taking of those assets and the keeping of those assets. And we heard last week from the Kyle Lovelace. Kyle, are you here?
He's outside.
Okay. Kyle is here and he's introducing a bill to try to put some restrictions on what policemen can do as far as seizures and what happens to the money after they seize those assets. So today we have, from Canadian County, we have the sheriff. Stand up, Mr. Randy. This is the sheriff, and his undersheriff is Chris.
Chris West.
And these guys are on the opposite side of the conversation. So we've asked them to come back, and they're going to tell their story and give their side. Now here's what we're going to do. Just so everybody understands, we are going to control the conversation. I know I've been accused of that before, but we are going to control the conversation. And we do that by you raising your hand, and then I'll acknowledge you by bringing the microphone to you and letting you talk in the microphone. And we are taking questions only, okay? If you want to make a speech, you'll have to wait until after 1:30. But if you have questions concerning their side of the story, then we'll ask you to raise your hand. I'll bring the microphone to you. I'll also talk to them about controlling the conversation so that if you shout a question out to them, they're not going to answer it because I'm controlling the conversation, right? Okay, I know you don't like that. You like to just say what you want to. But that's the way we're going to do it. So everybody understands that, right? So if you're not acknowledged, please don't shout out in the room. I'm going to turn this over to Randy and Chris. You guys tell us your side of the story. Good.
Thank you. I appreciate your having let me come back this week and address what Senator Lovelace talked to you about last week, and that's Senate Bill 838. Senate Bill 838 effectively takes the funds from local law enforcement that actually is involved in the arresting of the individuals associated with those assets that's been seized, and it gives it to the state general fund. And first of all, I would like to point out that some of the disparaging things that the senator has said and made comments regarding law enforcement, and I felt like last week those comments were largely taken at face value and believed. I had one of the individuals in here last week say that we reminded them of law enforcement, reminded them of the IRS, and that's simply not the case. We're your friends. We have taken sworn oaths to uphold the Constitution, and we do on a daily basis uphold the Constitution. We protect your Fourth Amendment rights that the senator says that we're violating. The comment has been made several times that asset forfeitures are nothing more than a highway robbery out on the highway, that law enforcement can take your assets without any due process, violating the Fourth Amendment, searching your vehicle without probable cause, and seizing your property. And that's not the case. Every stop we make, we have probable cause to make that stop. After that stop has been made, we have probable cause. Most usually, they give us permission to search a vehicle. But if we believe that there's contraband in that vehicle, whether it be human trafficking, drugs, money from illegal or criminal activity, then we search the vehicle either after given permission by the owner of the vehicle, or after running a dog around it and the dog hitting on the vehicle saying that there's drugs in the vehicle. Those are the only times that we search a vehicle, and both times they have probable cause to do so. Now, if we find contraband in that vehicle, we take and seize that contraband for one of two reasons: evidentiary purposes, to use as evidence, or for safekeeping, like a large sum of money, until it goes to court. Okay, once the assets are seized, it's turned over to the district attorney's office, the same as any other illegal activity or crime that we've taken and uncovered or investigated and filed charges to prosecute. That the senator has made on more than one occasion the comment that we take these assets without any due process. Well, we don't. We take, once we take the assets, like I said, it goes to the DA's office, and these assets are kept for safekeeping and evidentiary purposes. Then it goes to court, the same as any other case would, and if the people are found innocent of illegal activity, the assets are returned. If the people are found guilty by a jury of their peers or by the judge, and let me quote what my district judge has said, and you're welcome to call him. It's Judge Gary Miller. He's the judge, the district judge of Canadian County, and he said that in terms of forfeiting these assets, law enforcement doesn't forfeit those assets. He forfeits those assets. Every asset that's forfeited because of due process is forfeited by a judge. In our case, it's the district judge, Gary Miller. So there you have it. We're not violating your Fourth Amendment rights. We search and seize according to probable cause. The people get their due process, and it's not taken forfeited by law enforcement. As the senator has said, we're the judge and the jury out on the side of the road. He either doesn't understand what he's talking about, or he's purposely misleading or misstating the truth. I don't know. I'm not privy to which it is, but it's simply not true what the senator says, that we're the judge and the jury on the side of the road, because they get their day in court the same as any other suspect does. Last week, I felt like that after he spoke, a lot of you bought into it, and I don't mind telling you, it physically made me feel ill to see people of your stature, salt of the earth people, the types of people that whom I believe in and creates and normally supports law enforcement, buy into what the senator's saying. Law enforcement's not your enemy. I would give my life to constitutional rights, in spite of what the senator would have you to believe. I don't know how many senators or representatives or legislatures you've ever seen out on the side of the road or come to your house at night willing to give their life for you, but I would. I took an oath when I was 17 years old and went in the Marine Corps to protect your constitutional rights and to defend the Constitution. I took another one as a police officer. I took another one as a deputy sheriff. I took another one as a sheriff. I took another one as Special Deputy U.S. Marshal. I took another one as OSBI agent. I can tell you right now, law enforcement is your friend. Senator Lovelace brought up Ronald Reagan, whom I believe is the best president I've ever had in my lifetime and probably ever will. He said about law enforcement. He drew a circle with a blue marker. He drew a circle, and he said society is in this circle. Chaos is in the outside of the circle. Ronald Reagan said the only thing that protects society from total chaos is this thin blue line. And ladies and gentlemen, he said it was law enforcement. Ever since last August, in Ferguson, Missouri, when a young man got into a patrol car and about beat a police officer half to death, the police officer wound up using deadly force on him and killing him, which he should have, and he did, and I completely agree with what he did. He's lost his job, and he's lost, the chief lost his job. Ever since that point in time, law enforcement across this nation has been getting criticized by a group, by what I would like to say is the majority, the minority of this, and would like to believe the minority of this country, criticizing law enforcement, saying we're overstepping our bounds and our authority, and that we're racists, and saying all other kinds of vile things about law enforcement. And this is the bandwagon I feel like the senator has gotten on to. What he's saying about it is simply not true. The only thing his bill does that you don't already have, and I'm talking about your Fourth Amendment rights, your Fifth Amendment rights, your the due process, the only thing his bill offers that is different than what you already have out there is where the money goes to. The money seized currently goes to the the arresting agency, and those involved in prosecuting it, the district attorney, and those types of agencies that are involved in the seizure of that asset. If his bill goes through, those monies will go to the state general fund. The monies that agencies like Canadian County Sheriff's Office funds their drug programs with. And I can tell you right now, I couldn't afford to fund the drug program, the CID program that we currently have going without those funds. I just couldn't do it. It would be financially impossible. We balance our budget every year at Canadian County Sheriff's Office. The state last year had a $600 million shortfall in their budget. This bill is about money, in my opinion. Who gets the money from these cartel shipments that we currently take from the drug cartels, and use that same money to fight them with, and to fight the war on drugs, as well as other public safety programs. But that's what this bill it does. It takes the money from the prosecuting and arresting agency, and it gives it to the state general fund. Somehow or another, they believe that is going to make everything okay if the state gets the money, and it's not going to help anybody. New Mexico just recently adopted that, and I've visited with the state trooper in charge of CID for the state of New Mexico, and he said they're doing nothing now. They're doing nothing. It's an open corridor through the state of New Mexico. Any tips, excuse me, any tips or vehicles that are suspicious, whether they think it may be drugs or money. They refer to either Arizona or Texas, but they're not doing anything. And I don't believe that's what the senator wants. I believe the senator is sincere in maybe what he's trying to do. I would choose to believe, I hope that he honestly doesn't understand that law enforcement is out there doing a job. We're limiting the amount of drugs that are put out in this, not only this state, but this country. When we stop a vehicle on I-40, often as not, they're going out of state to other states because a lot of my deputies are commissioned federally. We've done controlled deliveries, wound up busting people in Kansas, Missouri, and in effort to go to the source, to get the drug pusher, to get the distributor, to get the assets and put a stop to the drug traffic. Drugs are killing our nation. I'll tell you how they're doing that. They're killing our youth, and the youth is the future of our nation. And drugs are killing them. I see it day in and day out. I don't know how many parents go to the senator's office, but I have parents that have either lost kids to overdose or have kids in my jail. I could tell you story after story after story where kids have gotten on drugs and they might as well throw their life in the trash can, because without a good support system from God, and without a good support system from the family, without a good support system from counselors, they don't get off these drugs. Drugs are killing our nation. And we're out there on a daily basis, a lot of times through the night, taking these drugs and these assets, the cartel's money off the highway, and we're using it to fight the cartels with. And I don't know that we'll ever beat the war on drugs, if we'll ever be able to win it, but we're certainly keeping it in check where it's not getting as bad as what it would without law enforcement. So we're out there doing our job, folks. We're not trying to victimize any innocent people. We're not victimizing any innocent people. If you look in the handout I turned out, in the back of that handout, there's 3 senators there that have either had indictments, had charges levied against them, or have been put in prison. And does that make all the senators bad? No, that doesn't make all the senators bad. Does it make the legislature bad? No, it doesn't make the legislature bad. The senator last week gave me the impression, as well as I felt like he gave y'all the impression, that because of a few abuse cases across this nation, and very few, very few, that law enforcement in this whole program is bad. And he quotes the Constitution and our forefathers. You know what? My office is a constitutional office, and our forefathers were fundamentalists and constitutionalists, and I might add they were Christians too. They wasn't Muslims, they were Christians. And this, as I told one girl in here last week, after meeting in a meeting like we had in here last week, and all the events that have taken place lately and have taken place in the last year, and yes, Ferguson being one of them, I feel like my profession, law enforcement, I feel like this country's going to hell in a handbasket. The things that we have always felt dear and close and near to, that we've always been taught, and yes, law enforcement being good is one of them. This country's given up. We're turning on. We're watching it on a daily basis. People turning on our law enforcement. I saw it in here last week. People turning on God and Christianity. This is a Christian nation. In spite of what others would say, or it being politically correct to accept all religions, yeah, we can accept all religions, and you can worship any religion you want to in this country, but don't force it on America. Our forefathers were Christians, and our forefathers never intended to take the Lord out of our government. Nor did our forefathers ever intend on taking and turning the people on law enforcement that's operating within the guidelines and the perimeters of the Constitution. We've got to have law enforcement. The values that we hold near and dear, I would just like to see us start getting back to some of those values today. And if you don't like the government, don't hold it against this country or this government. Vote the people out that are operating it in a way that you don't agree with. I mean, I said in a couple meetings this last week, I won't ever fear my father's hand, and I won't ever fear my government, and I won't ever fear law enforcement. Those are three things that we hold near and dear, or always have in this country. And it sickens me to think that any of you would look at law enforcement and believe that we're something other than protectors of your constitutional rights and protectors of your life and liberty and property. That's what law enforcement is. The pamphlet, I'm not going to go through all the pamphlet. There's last year's statistics from Canadian County is listed right there on all of our forfeitures. There's talking points and statements from the district attorney in Canadian County, Mike Field. There's talking points and statements from Mr. Prater's office, the DA in Oklahoma County. I can tell you that the DA council has tried to talk to Senator Lovelace. I can tell you that the DA council's against this asset forfeiture program. I can tell you that the DAs are. I can tell you that law enforcement, the Oklahoma Sheriff's Association, the director of the Oklahoma Sheriff's and Peace Officers Association sitting right there, he'll tell you, law enforcement, your officials, the people you've put in place to protect you, we're all against this asset forfeiture bill, and we're here to help y'all. We're not here to hurt you or violate any of your constitutional rights. I want to introduce a man that I am very proud to have on board with me, and he and I are partners in running Canadian County Sheriff's Office, and he feels as strongly about this bill as what I do. He feels as strongly about the negative impact it's having on law enforcement from some of the disparaging comments that Senator Lovelace is saying publicly and in the media. This is Chris West. I love him to death. He's my right hand, right arm, and I'm gonna have him speak to you just a little while, and then we'll be glad to answer any questions that y'all might have. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. I really don't want to stand behind this podium, but I know the media's got some the recording devices here. But I want to tell you a little bit about myself first. I'm from Yukon. I grew up over there, graduated from high school in 1980. I'm a veteran, spent 3 years in active duty in the Marines. Got on the highway patrol. I remember when I was a kid growing up seeing the Smokey the Bears out there, and I was always impressed with them. And, I'd gotten out of the military, and my wife and I were up at a pizza joint. 3 troopers walked in. And I told her, I said, that's what I'm going to do for sure. So I spent 28 years with the Highway Patrol. Had the good fortune of being the captain over this troop. I had 7 counties, Troop A. Oklahoma County was one of them, about 90 people altogether. So I had troopers that were out there involved in these types of activities, making drug interdictions. Was the spokesman for the Department of Public Safety on 3 different occasions, as a trooper, as a lieutenant, and as a captain. And of course, with each different level that I went back, I had different levels of authority and responsibility. So I handled a lot of controversial issues when I was the captain over it on a statewide basis. And during my time on the patrol, how many of you are police officers or ever have been? Okay, there's not a whole lot. I want to bring this up because I want you to understand the relevance of this topic that we're talking about. Since I left the Highway Patrol, I've been at the Sheriff's Office for 2.5 years, so I got about 31 years of law enforcement. The average police officer, trooper, deputy sheriff, whatever the case may be, doesn't encounter this topic every day that they're at work. Does that make sense? This isn't something that on every traffic stop they're seizing people's property, that they're seizing criminals' property. In all of my time as a law enforcement man, I seized property other than maybe a can of Budweiser beer or a bottle of alcohol or a bag of marijuana. Okay, if we're talking about that, but as far as taking somebody's assets, it was $19,000, and it was on I-40 right over here between Meridian and Portland. And I'm going to tell you about that stop. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was going eastbound on I-40, and I was coming up on it was a large 4-door sedan. And as I was coming up behind it, it's pretty lit up out here on I-40. This is probably around the early 90s. There was a long-haired person that was driving this vehicle, and there was another long-haired person on the passenger side. And I thought it was 2 females, but as I got close and looked, I realized that the driver was a man. And he was doing this to the female and yelling and screaming at her to the point that I was concerned for her personal safety. And I think all of y'all would have been too. So I hit the lights, pulled him over. And guy had a fur coat on that went around his neck, down to his ankles. And he was acting very strange, had behavior that I would associate with somebody that was on drugs. And got to visiting with him, got to visiting with her. She told me that she was a prostitute and that he was her pimp. And he was accusing her of taking some of her money and hiding it. He was making verbal threats to her. So my suspicion was accurate, that he was angry with her and she was afraid. So I pulled over and checked on her personal welfare. As I went back to the guy to get him up, there was a 35 millimeter film canister. Does everybody know what those are? The little plastic film canisters. Normally they were clear, they were black and had a little lid on it. And I saw it kind of moving away from him because he had just gotten rid of it. And I opened it up and there was a rock of crack cocaine. Anybody ever heard of rock cocaine? Crack cocaine? Well, that's what it was. So this guy's a criminal, right? She's already told me she's a prostitute and he's her pimp. And he's got crack cocaine. He also had $19,000 cash on him. I seized that $19,000 cash because to me it made sense. This guy's involved in criminal activity. He's got a prostitute, he's got crack cocaine, he's got $19,000. Now he told me that he had sold a house and it was the proceeds from selling his house. Well, I thought it was reasonable to go ahead and seize it, submit it all to the DA, let it go through the court system and let them decide, not me. I was just the collector of all the evidence, packaged it together and sent it through. Well, guess what? It all happened just like I said that it did. He was found guilty, and the judge forfeited the money. So, one time in 31 years, if I painted a good picture, okay, this isn't everyday norm that every officer that is out there that's running into these cases, and we're talking about criminals. We're not talking about, you know, there was someone last week that said that they were going on a trip and they were worried about taking, what was it? Traveler's checks. Oh, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard in my life. You know, I mean, if we were out there just violating people's due process, I mean, anytime, and policing for profits, that's an insult to me as a professional law enforcement officer, okay? And I'm not some booger eater, okay? I mean, I've got college degrees, and I consider myself to be a professional. There's a lot of traffic stops that we make out there. We run into all kinds of stuff. We save people's lives and make a big difference. We're not driving down the road and stopping people and saying, man, that looks valuable. I think we are going to seize it, take it from these people, tell the jury or the judge a cockamamie story so that we can get it, sell it, and go buy some goodie. I mean, that's not how it works. We're talking about dealing with criminals. Can I see that newspaper right there? I was reading this newspaper article. This was in the Oklahoman from this weekend. Point of view, it looks like Trent England and Gene Perry. Forgive me, I don't have my glasses with me. But did anybody read this article over the weekend? I'll hold that. Boy, when you get over 50, it just goes downhill, doesn't it? But I want to read through this if you'll bear with me for just a minute. The Fourth Amendment protects Americans from unreasonable searches and seizures, while the Fifth Amendment requires due process and just compensation for property taken by the government for public use. So how do we get to a point in history where government is seizing personal property with no compensation and little to no evidence of a crime? The upside-down process is called Civil Asset Forfeiture, and it certainly does not line up with our nation's constitutional ideals. Property is seized. There's some key words I want you guys, I've got them underlined on here. Property is seized by government officials, supposedly, because it's connected to criminal activity. Supposedly. That's insulting to me as a professional who's dedicated my life to it and married partners. It's connected to criminal activity, yet many seizures are not accompanied by conviction or even the filing of charges. Let me explain that. We've got a vehicle that's going down the road. We've got a girl, and this is a real-life case. This isn't anecdotal evidence. This actually has happened since I've worked at the sheriff's office. Somebody flies out to Amarillo. They spend $19,000, I believe, on a motorhome. They drive the motorhome to Phoenix. From Phoenix, they go to LA, and we're able to, by looking in the vehicle and finding receipts of the case, we're actually able to put this together. And I don't want to get these cases mixed up. Let me use a different one. I think that we actually may have made an arrest on that one. But let's say for example, we stop a vehicle and there's $18,000 in the vehicle, and they say, well, we don't know where it came from. It's in a black bag. They call it a throw bag or a suicide bag. I don't know where it came from, how it got there. I don't know anything about it. Okay, so they just divorce themselves of it. They actually sign over a letter of this, what do we call it?
Non-ownership affidavit.
Non-ownership affidavit. So they give it to us. There's no other criminal activity that's going on other than this large amount of money that may be there. They don't really have a story that's put together. Let me tell you, there may be two people that are traveling in the vehicle, and within just a few people about where they've been, where they're going, what's the purpose of their trip, so on and so forth. And when their stories don't jive, well, that's reasonable to believe that there could be criminal activity that's going on. So it's just seized for evidentiary purposes. Well, when it gets to the DA is the first step in that system that says yay or nay. I don't believe that we're gonna send this on to the judge for forfeiture proceedings, and he can turn it back to them, or it could go to the judge, and the judge says, yes, we think that, that it doesn't make sense, and then the judge would make that decision. But we're just the first step in actually taking it. That may not have been a very good example, I apologize, but I want to get down here to one other part where it says the profit motive, and again, like I said, that's pretty insulting. The profit motive distorts law enforcement's decision-making, leading to victimization of innocent Oklahomans. This is something I really want to talk about. How many was here last week for the presentation? Okay, more importantly, I want to know how many weren't. Okay. There was a video that was put up, and there was a giant graph that talked about. Do you guys remember the chart that the senator put up and talked about? This is the process to either send it through and get it back, or whatever the federal government states. I don't believe that chart represented the state of Oklahoma's process, so I think that was very misleading. And I think a lot of it is built to incite fear on people's emotions. And again, the sheriff hit on this very eloquently about where to support all your rights. I mean, I've been an oath keeper as far as I'm concerned ever since I took my first one in the military. But we're not here to violate your rights. We're here to protect them. But last week I used another example from my law enforcement career is going into restaurants. And there may be a family that's over there and they say, hey, we have this little 2-year-old, could you come over here for me? You go over there and they say, Jimmy, you better be good or this man's going to take you to jail. Well, they're playing, I mean, have you guys ever seen that?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen it. You know, that's exactly what we don't want them to do. We want them to trust law enforcement. Okay? But they're playing on that little 2-year-old's emotional maturity level to incite fear and distress. And I think that's a lot of what's going on here. There's not this chronic abuse in Oklahoma that's going on. All the cases that the senator's using as anecdotal evidence. The state of New Mexico wants to use that as a model. We're not New Mexico. I mean, don't try to put square pegs in round holes. You know, from talking to the 2 DAs, Mike Fields is our DA out in Canadian County out of Enid, and then Scott Rowland's the first assistant for Oklahoma County. I talked to those guys last week, and I talked to Mike Fields again this morning. Let me take a look at this real quick. If you guys have this, you'll open it up to Mike Fields, who met with the senator. I believe there were several of them that met with the senator. If you'll notice on the second page, that's the bullet points for Mike Fields, the Canadian County District Attorney. At the very top, this is just a point that I want to make. He calls it the Cartel and Street Gangs Asset Protection Act. Okay, that's a career prosecutor. And he's saying that because he sees the jeopardies and the harm that this bill could have to law enforcement's ability to wage war on the cartel. Okay, now if you're going back to about 5 or 6 pages back, Scott Rowland, you'll see at the top it says Scott Rowland, First Assistant District Attorney's Office. If you'll go down to bullet point number 2, he says, rather than the Asset Protection Act, as he likes to call his bill, a close reading reveals this more accurately as the Organized Crime Income Protection Act. So I asked Scott when I talked to him on the phone about this if him and Mike had talked and shared thoughts on it, because they basically labeled it the same thing. He said no, they have not talked, but that was the concern that both of them had, was that it's actually going to benefit the bad guys rather than it's going to benefit the good guys. Does that make sense? Okay. Scott Rowland also made the point when we were talking, and brought this up the other night, is if you read on into this article, it says, imagine if you were a boutique owner. Imagine. And the reason that they're using that word imagine is because where's the Oklahoma cases? Where are they? It says imagine. Where are they? The senator's smiling. He knew where I was going with it. But, you know, Scott was like, challenge the senator to go out and get, he may have done it since we challenged him the other day, but I think it'd be hard pressed to find them. Challenge him to go to 10 or 15 or 20 or to all of the counties that are out there and look at the last 15 or 20 or 40 or 50 forfeiture cases. And I said, or I added this to it, or better yet, look at all the asset forfeiture cases in all the counties as far back as you can go. And let's find the chronic abuse that's going on to make this such an important topic. And I just don't think that it's out there, and that's why they don't have it. So they're playing on your emotions. trying to incite fear, using your emotions to muster support for this thing. I don't think that the evidence is there, just based on the case that the senator provided last week. I think a lot of it is, I don't know how much of it is original. It looks like most of it was borrowed. And again, he doesn't cite the cases. One case that he does cite, you may have read it in the newspaper a couple of weeks ago, is up in the Panhandle. I believe there was a district attorney's office that seized a house, and there was an assistant district attorney that lived in that house for a period of time. Well, that's really not a good case to cite, and I think the senator recognized that last week and acknowledged it, because in that particular case, the forfeiture process went through fine. And let me tell you what happens when the forfeiture goes through. Let's say, for example, we seize a vehicle that's got drugs in it, and the judge awards us the vehicle. He may tell us, he may give it to the DA and or they give it to us and tell us to sell it and give the proceeds to the DA. Okay? But a lot of times it may be a vehicle that's going to be a good vehicle that we could use for our undercover operations trying to fight these people. You know, we're parts of a OB&DD narcotics task force. We may need an undercover car. So we'll get with the attorney, talk to the DA. The DA can say, yeah, you can use this vehicle, you know, get some modifications to the court, and then when we're through with it, then we can sell it. But, so there's different things that can be done, but in this particular case, the forfeiture process on that house was an issue. They didn't follow the orders from the court, and they let the assistant DA live in the house, or they paid off some college loans. But as far as the forfeiture process, that went through fine. Does that make sense?
No.
So, no?
No, that doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't?
Any sense at all.
How so?
Hang on.
Hang on.
We'll do this.
Anyway, let me try to do a better job of explaining that. The forfeiture process was to get to deal with the property. It went through the courts, and the judge forfeited the property, and then the DA, which I think in this particular case was told to sell the property, didn't do it. They actually used it for another case. But anyway, again, I just feel like, for being a career law enforcement person, having been out there managing, being a part of it, and I've seen this is the tactic of so many people so oftentimes, is they try to play on people's emotions and fear to convince them to do something. I'm telling you, as a law enforcement professional that's dedicated my life to it, there's not widespread abuse. Do I support the 4th and 5th Amendments? Sure, I support all of them. If it was out there and there was widespread abuse, law enforcement would be the first ones to step up and say, yeah, we need to do something with this.
What Chris was the point he was trying to make about that house, was it right what the DA or ADA did? No. Was it criminal? Yes. Did it have anything to do with the asset forfeiture process? No. The asset forfeiture process went through as it was supposed to. Took the property from a criminal that bought the house, the house was derived from criminal activity, funds from criminal activity. All right. At that point, everything was fine. But then you had unscrupulous ADA or DA. I'm not familiar with all the fine points of the case, but he went in and used that house for personal gain. He might as well have stole it. He might as well have stole the money. Shame on him, and prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law. But don't say all the law enforcement. Don't say the asset forfeiture process is wrong because of it. There wasn't anything wrong with the asset forfeiture process. I'll get to you in just a minute, sir. There wasn't anything wrong with the asset forfeiture process. It was that crook they had in a position to take advantage of it, he took advantage of the asset after it had went through the process, been forfeited by the courts, had all the due process, that the judge forfeited it to law enforcement. That crook allegedly, again, I'm not familiar enough with it to give you all the fine details on it, but if he took advantage of his position, that wouldn't have been any different than a law enforcement officer going out and stopping a vehicle and doing what the senator's accusing us of doing, stopping the vehicle, taking money out of it, putting it in our pocket. Shame on anybody that would do that. Shame on anybody that would tarnish their badge. Shame on anybody that would betray the trust and faith that you people have or should have in law enforcement. But that's what the undersheriff was trying to say. It wasn't the asset forfeiture process. It was that person, if he did that, it made him a crook. And it's no different than the three senators that in the back of that handout I gave you. There's some bad apples in every bunch. Very, very, very few bad apples. But we don't discard the whole program, the whole process because of a few bad apples. We know as human beings that there's only one person that ever walked this earth that was perfect, and we crucified him. Don't crucify this program just because we got a few bad apples in it. No more than you crucify the legislature because of the senators and the representatives that have committed crimes within the legislature. That doesn't mean our legislative process no more than that ADA, if that's what you want to call him. I call him a crook. But no more than he makes the whole asset forfeiture process bad.
Okay, Randy, let's stop here and take some questions, okay?
Okay, I told this gentleman back here.
I'll get to him in just a minute. Chris, if you would come on up, I'm gonna let you guys be a human shield for each other. So you don't stand behind the other if you need to. First question I want to ask you, do you understand that you are swimming in shark-infested waters today?
I don't believe that.
Let me do this. Neil, I'm going to ask you if you would stand up. Neil is a former police officer. How many former military vets do we have in here? Please stand up. Please stand up. How many wives of veterans are in this room? Would you please stand up? Wives of veterans. How many had children? Go ahead and stand up, Linda. Your husband's a veteran. He's standing over you. You have to stand with him. How many of you have children who are vets or currently serving? Please stand up. How many of you have parents who served in the military, in probably law enforcement, fire department, anything? Okay, that's the room. Thank you, guys. You can sit down. So you are swimming with the diamond in the thorns. These are the guys that. What are you doing standing up? Oath takers.
We're all oath takers.
There you go. But these are the ones who are law enforcement people. They don't jump on law enforcement every time something goes wrong. So you understand that from the get-go. We're going to take some questions, and I'm going to ask you to keep these to questions, please. If you start to make a long political statement, I'm going to take the microphone and walk away and go to the next person. So we're taking questions right now. Please give your first name. Stand up, please.
Well, my first name is Dave. And you mentioned a few minutes ago you called that individual who took advantage of the seized house as unscrupulous, I think was your term. But there was nothing wrong with the process. If the process sent those seized items elsewhere to any other agency or to any other account, be it the general fund or whatever, you would eliminate the desire or the incentive for law enforcement, be it the cops, sheriffs, type those, as well as DAs, to to find a way or find uses for that kind of.
Make it a question, please.
Yeah, make it quick.
Make it a question.
I was working on that, but if you're not gonna let me talk, that's all right.
Ask a question.
That's what
Okay,
this part of the
let me
program is,
answer
ask
his
a question.
question. Let me answer his question, and,
Okay.
and I understand, sir, what you're getting at. It would eliminate the portion of the process by sending the assets to the state for it to be unscrupulously handled by local authorities. Sir, I'm trying to answer what.
I was never actually able to ask my question.
You made a good.
And what's really strange to me is that we can have this group, and I've been coming to this group for quite a while, and I'm actually not able to ask.
Okay, we're done with
We're
this,
gonna have
please.
you,
We're
just
done.
talk to
Somebody
us,
have a
not allow us
question?
to respond.
Okay, we have a question
Well,
here.
sir, okay.
This is
I'll
a
go ahead.
question, please.
I'm gonna finish answering that question, whether he's here or not. He posed it, and it needs to be
go ahead.
addressed. Irregardless, if the assets were to go to the state, is the state perfect? I've showed you that the state's not perfect. It could be handled unscrupulously by crooks just as easily at the state level as it is the law enforcement local level. And who better to get the funds from the drug cartels and fund the programs with than the law enforcement that's out there actually doing the job. But sure, that whether you're on the local level or whether or not it goes to the state, it's still going to be, those funds are still going to be available to be misused. It's just different set of people. Okay.
Okay, I just want everybody to understand, we didn't just make the rules up today. This is the way High Noon operates. When we have a special guest come in, we allow that guest to make their speech, and then we ask them questions. If you want to make a speech, apply to Bob or me, and we'll set up a time that you can have the platform, and then we'll ask you questions. But in all fairness, when we have a special guest, we ask questions. So this is you ask us your question.
Okay, can cops lie to make a case?
Can they lie to make a case?
Yes.
Not a good cop, no.
Lie to who?
To anybody?
Sure, that's
Expound
how,
on your question. What do you
No,
mean?
the Supreme Court ruled that the police can lie to make a case.
oh, can we lie to
Trick,
suspects?
trick,
Can we
whatever you wanna
trick
call it, yeah.
suspects? Can we
You're
go?
talking about entrapment.
I'm talking about entrapment. Yes.
That's
It's legal, legal for cops to do that.
Yeah.
That's where you guys lost the case.
Let him answer, okay?
Yeah, that's where you guys lost it with the American public.
Go ahead and answer the question, please. Thank you.
The courts have ruled in order for law enforcement to, majority of the time, work undercover to be effective in a lot of the programs they have, the drug task force working undercover in drugs. We've all seen.
I'm talking
seen-
about the
Shoot, let him
blue
answer.
officer, police officer come right up to you.
Please let him
Lie.
answer, okay?
to,
Just wait till we finish.
in order to prosecute and find the guilty party and
Everybody's guilty.
prostitution, burglaries, can you, and I'll go back to the example, working undercover, representing yourself in terms of somebody that you're not. Yes, they've upheld that the same as law, an accepted practice in any other area of law enforcement.
Here's another question.
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
You know, we're really involved in internet
Please, in the
crimes.
microphone.
Everybody, I don't know if y'all know or not, but the sheriff's really big into internet crimes against children. We have a special task force. We get a lot of child predators. We arrested one just last week, and I was visiting with Lieutenant Adam Flowers, who's the main investigator on that. And we made the arrest, and during the text messages and the email conversation, the man asked if he was a police officer. And he said no. Because his internet profile was a 14-year-old Mustang girl. And as the guy got closer, he's getting closer and closer coming to me, he says, "Are you sure you're not a police officer?" And is it legal for him to lie and tell them? Yes, it's the same as the undercover narcotics guy that grows long hair and a beard, and he's buying dope from bad people. Okay? Now, when I'm in my uniform and I'm dealing with the public up front, no, it's unacceptable to lie to you.
But it's legal.
You know who I am, I know who you are. We're dealing with things that are up front, traffic violations, rape calls, whatever the case may be. There's no deception there. That's the reason that you have a uniform and a badge on, okay? It's honesty, integrity, character, morality, all those things. But when you start going into undercover operations and deal with criminal activities such as internet crimes against children, protecting our youth, yes, it is lawful. Yes, it is.
You just
Jim,
avoided the
Jim,
whole
hold on
question.
just a
Can
second.
you
If you have
lie
another
without a
question-
uniform?
If you have another question, raise your hand, I'll come back. You're done for now.
Yeah.
Jim.
Yeah, done.
Sure.
My name is Jim, thank you for being here today. Sir, is it possible for you to say, of all the monies that your department spends during a year, fiscal year, what percentage comes from ad valorem taxes in your county? What percentage comes from, let's say, federal grants or what other sources? And what percentage comes through this civil forfeiture process?
Of $6.5 million budget, approximately $5.5 million of that to $5.75 million of that comes from ad valorem taxes. That leaves approximately $750,000 that I supplement out of my cash funds to run my office with. Out of that $750,000 to sometimes over $1 million, sometimes, I think last year it was like 900,000 that the county ad valorem taxes fell short, and I needed about another 900,000 last year to run the jail in my office with. Those come out of the sheriff's cash funds, and those cash funds are derived from a lot of different places. Serving papers at $50 a paper, citations, I think we get all of $15 for a citation. State gets the rest of that. And our commissary program at the jail, where an inmate buys a candy bar, he gives $1 for it. We might get 40% of it. They make a telephone call. If they pay $1 for the telephone call, we get 60 cents of it. Our asset forfeitures, they have averaged, since I've been sheriff, approximately $400,000 a year. So you can see how much of that deficit is made up from asset forfeitures. But let me say this, and I'll make this statement, and I'm proud to stand here flat-footedly and tell you this. I'll take all the drug cartel money I can get. And for every $1 I take, it saves you $1 worth of tax payers' dollars. For every $1 of theirs I take, I use it against them, and that cuts them to the core. They don't, when we take money from when we take drugs from drug cartels, all we're doing is taking a commodity that they have just few cents on the dollar invested in. We take their money, and it's money to them just the same as it is to anybody else. We cut them to the core. We use it against them. Plus, we fund other public safety programs. The computer crimes program he just mentioned, all that was completely purchased by and funded by drug cartel money. So you bet, I'll take all the drug cartel money I can get my hands on.
Okay, another question.
My name's Ferlin. I appreciate both of you coming, appreciate your service, the military and the sheriff's department. You stated the only thing this bill will do is divert the money to the state and away from the county. You called it a cartel income protection asset program. Why would the criminals care where the money goes? If it goes to the county or goes to the state, why would they more to the bill than just where the money goes.
No, what the,
I mean, if it's just going to the state and I'm a criminal, I don't care about that.
Let him
Sure,
answer.
sure.
Let him answer.
and I understand where you're confused on that. That what the two DAs were trying to say, that the undersheriff quoted them as saying, the only person that's going to profit from this bill, if these funds get taken away from local law enforcement, will be the drug cartels. Because if the program, like in Canadian, and actually the only program I can actually talk to you about is Canadian County Sheriff's Office program, because that's the only one I'm familiar with. But I can tell you this, if we were to lose those funds from the drug cartels, we could afford to have 5 deputies up on the highway and run that drug interdiction program 7 days a week. We couldn't afford to. The funds wouldn't be there. I think I can speak for most law enforcement. They couldn't afford to continue with their CID programs because the funds wouldn't be there. And so thereby taking the law enforcement away from it, taking the law enforcement away from it for lack of funding, because the state will have the funds. It would open us up to be an open corridor like it has in New Mexico for the transportation.
So this law
of
does
drugs.
absolutely nothing to change the forfeiture process. Nothing. Just where the money goes.
Primarily, just where the money goes,
Okay,
yeah.
that's my question.
Okay, and I would add this, as there's a question for me. You talk a lot about drug money, which most of the people here don't have a problem with. We're talking about other private forfeitures of automobiles and excessive tickets and fines. For instance, a law enforcement department that has quotas on tickets so that they can cover the cost of their officers, so they have their officers out writing tickets to make their pay. That's not a way to serve the public. That's the question most of us have in mind.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. Can you answer that? Is it just about drugs for you, or does it include all the other forfeitures as well?
It includes all the other forfeitures. Asset forfeitures are, simply put, it's the proceeds or the assets derived from criminal activity, as the undersheriff so eloquently pointed out about the pimp and the prostitute. I don't know about you, but it offends me that somebody would derive funds from prostitutes and not pay taxes on them. They're derived from immoral activity, illegal activity, and shouldn't shouldn't derive the funds from that. If we let them keep their funds from these illegal activities, well then we're basically stamping as a society, stamping our approval on it's okay to do this.
Adlai Brinkley is another example.
Okay, got a question here. Mark.
My name's Mark. Now, I've heard both of you guys speak last week. I heard the senator speak last week. And I've heard the New Mexico solution being used, or as a pattern. How is their system working under this pattern?
It's not working. The gentleman that I corresponded with is in charge of their CID program, and he said the state legislature thinks that they're going to derive all these resources from the CID program, and he said next year, or the end of this year, they'll drive everything that was forfeited. They get those funds, but from that year thereafter, they're not going to get anything, because he said we're not doing anything. So the state's not going to be getting near the funds or resources or assets they think they're going to, because the gentleman in New Mexico that's in charge of the program has told me they're not doing anything. So after the first year, when they get the funds that have already been forfeited, there's not going to be any funds or very, very little funds for the state to get.
Go ahead, Mr. Carter. You standing for a question?
Yes.
Okay, we have one here first, and then you, and then I've got to get up and stand. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Neil, and as introduced earlier, I'm prior law enforcement. And I spent a lot of years with the California Highway Patrol, and I think it's one of the best trained and most respected agencies in the country. A lot of police officers come to California to get trained in our program. I would like to make a clarification from last week, Sheriff and Chris.
Can you make this in the form of a question?
Yeah, I'm asking them a question. You remember last week when there was a comment about putting a driver's license and a registration certificate in a plastic envelope and hanging it out the window at a DUI check? I think we left here feeling that there was a little gray area there. And my question to you is, if you agree or not, that under the law, when you get a driver's license, it is not a right to have a driver's license, it's a privilege. And that privilege requires you, when you sign for that license, to comply with all the laws, especially at DUI checkpoints. A police officer at a DUI checkpoint cannot adequately measure the amount of alcohol on your breath, the color of your eyes, the slurring of your speech through a window. And so I'm asking if you agree, so there's clarification to the group that left here thinking that they could put their license in a bag and hand it out the window and not speak to a law enforcement officer is totally wrong.
That's totally wrong. That's one of the things that was, statements that was made in here last week that I didn't get an opportunity to respond to. Thank you for asking it.
My name's Ken. Thanks for coming today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Can you talk a little bit about civil asset forfeiture? And what I mean is that there are horror stories all over this country about things being taken, assets being taken, and the criminal is the asset, the way I understand it, and no criminal charged, no person charged.
What's the question?
And is that true? And can you tell us about how that's taken care of? Those people have a hard time getting their assets back if nobody's charged. Do you know about that? Anything about that?
In every case where there's a suspect, there's a charge that has been charged. Now, whether or not they return and refute those charges and have their day in court, that's beyond our control. But if in every case they get their day in court or due process. Now, I think if I understand the question correctly, you may be referring to something the Undersheriff touched briefly on, and that's non-ownership affidavits. You would be surprised how many tens and $50,000 and $100,000 that people have in their vehicle in hidden compartments that our dogs pick up on, and or they give us permission to search the vehicle, and we find the money and say, do you know anything about this? We ask them. They say, nope, don't know anything about that. That's not mine. I don't claim it. Don't have anything to do with it. I don't even want it in my vehicle. And they sign the say, okay, well, I'm glad I found it. Sign this non-ownership affidavit, if they can speak English. Sign this non-ownership affidavit, and you can be on your way. And they sign the non-ownership affidavit and thank us for getting that contraband out of the vehicle, and they leave. And in that case, no, there's not a suspect that's been charged with anything. We have to advertise that then as found property, and if nobody claims it, it's forfeited by a judge, not law enforcement. It's forfeited by a judge.
Question.
Hi, I'm Steve Lewis, and I just want to know how you guys can try to come to a debate when you've totally missed the point. The senator, all the rest of us understand criminal. You guys are browbeating us in the Senate about criminal cases. We're talking about a civil forfeiture. This happens all the time by law enforcement. in my 60 years of life, I've had dozens of times where local law agencies in this area have held me at gunpoint at roadside for no reason, plus my vehicle was seized in December. So
Dozens of
yeah,
times?
Dozens of times.
Wow, I've never
On
had
mistaken
that.
identity, and where they think my vehicle looks like a vehicle that was involved in a crime someplace else, and they're gonna delay me on the roadside and cover me with their 45 next to my temple? No. You guys are judge and jury, just like the senator said, in my experience in 60 years.
And that's happened
The
to you
question is,
dozens of times.
how can you guys come here when you totally missed the point when you were talking about criminal, when the senator is talking about civil?
Sure. Thank you. What's your name?
Steve.
Don't ever gamble, you don't have very good luck.
Again, again, 31 years, I probably haven't drawn my weapon a dozen times on people. I think that, wow, you must have really bad luck. But again, I don't think that we have missed the point, and I think I pointed it out, that where's the evidence? Where's the smoking gun? Cite the Oklahoma cases where this has happened. And did everybody hear that when I asked it? Yeah, we talked about the criminal activity, but we're saying that, we're bringing that up because we're saying that this legislation is going to negatively impact law enforcement's ability to disrupt criminal activity. Did everybody hear that? Okay, and we also said, show us the smoking gun, where's the overwhelming, widespread, or minute abuse for us to do this? And at the same time, we're saying, we support everybody's constitutional rights, we take an oath to support and defend them. So we're on your side, we're not against you, we're about catching bad guys.
And you use the word browbeat, I'm sorry, does anybody?
Use the microphone, please, if you would.
Does anybody in here feel like I browbeat them today, besides this gentleman? Okay, well, thank you, because if I did, I sincerely, from the depths of my heart, apologize to you. It wasn't my intention to browbeat anybody. All I'm doing is asking for you to give me an opportunity today to convince you that law enforcement's your friend, we're not your enemy.
Bobby, you need some help there?
Yeah, I think I'm going to.
You have a question?
Thank you. I appreciate that you're being here and want you to take, I'm Glenn Howard. I want you to get all the drug money you can. I was here last week and the question I asked, and I've had several also observe that have done like I did. I'm the one who pointed out I had a little rent house that, much to my displeasure, I discovered a renter had it wired and plumbed in the attic. And when I found out about it, I evicted them. My concern was, should I call law enforcement, or as I did, I cleaned up the mess and threw in the trash and found a new renter. Would there have been a possibility of my having my home or little rent house confiscated or held, or even claimed and had to go through a legal process to try to get it back? Or how would that have handled it?
He's saying his renter had a little marijuana garden going in there.
Right. And I had a few others come around after it's over and said, I think I'd have done just like you did, throw it in the trash and find a new rent. So I think, you know, we're all eager to get all the drug money you can and all the criminal element. But for those of us who, particularly like a renter, what kind of risk are we in?
Sir, you would be surprised how stringent the guidelines are that my DA uses to confiscate anybody's assets. And let me say this, we have taken rental property that people are dealing and cooking drugs in, and went in and busted the meth lab, busted the drug traffickers. It was rental property, and never one time have we ever even began to file any asset forfeiture against the person renting that property, not one time. If we would, the DA wouldn't take it, because let me say this, and I'll tell you why I know he wouldn't take it. We had a a boy in Canadian County that was dealing drugs out of a house his mother gave him. And he was living in the house, his mother gave it to him. And he was cooking meth, he was selling it out of there, he was trafficking it out of there. And when the drug task force busted him, it was his house. We took it and we were going to put it in asset forfeiture. The DA said the intent of the mother, when she gave him that house, was for him to live in it, not deal drugs. That it was still in the mother's name, and she had never signed the deed over, and the DA didn't file the asset forfeiture, although the boy had, it was his house, he said it was his house, the mother said, yes, I gave it to him, but morally, if we would have took it, we would have been taking assets from the mother, and we wouldn't have been right. Legally, it was still in the mother's name, so legally we could have taken it anyway. The DA said no, we're not even going to entertain the idea of taking it, and I wholeheartedly agreed with it. And that's just this first step in the asset forfeiture process that we go through. That's when we take the asset forfeiture to the DA's office, and we go over all of it and talk about it. The DA, he's either on board or he's not on board.
Can we have another question?
Sure.
From our esteemed state representative. It's not the first time I've ever seen a man have a wrestling match with a potato chip bag. It's the first time I've seen a potato chip bag win.
My name's Bobby. I got a question for you, Sheriff. Would you be opposed to, if the funds went to, had one person in the state that was in charge to look at the funds before they were distributed to see if they were drugs or not drugs, and it went into one pot? Would you be opposed to that? What I'm talking about is if it's, when you forfeit the money and someone says, hey, that's my money, you shouldn't take it, that they could go before one person and one person could make the decision whether it's their money or not. Would you be opposed to that?
Sure, I'd be opposed to it because it needs to go through the due process. It needs to go through the court. It needs to go be forfeited by a judge, and it needs to be forfeited to the agency that actually took the funds and prosecuted the criminal.
Okay.
I don't know of any other way.
All right, here's the problem. The guy that you got the money from, he wasn't in drugs, but you took his money because you suspected it was drugs. It's going to cost him money to get that money, his own money back.
Right.
That's my question. Why would we not just set it up where one person could make a decision on that? If the guy's in drugs, he's not going to go up and challenge it anyway. But the guy that you took his money, and it wasn't right, he wasn't on drugs, but you just confiscated his money or his house.
You're talking about an arbitrator.
Basically, one person. Would you be opposed to it?
Sure I would, and Mr. Representative, the reason I would be is for the same reason that Senator Lovelace is saying that the asset forfeiture bill is bad. He's saying that there's no due process. Well, there is due process, whether he realizes it or not. Same due process as in any criminal case. We've got to have due process. I'm not comfortable for any one person to make a decision whether or not that person was or wasn't guilty of illegal criminal activity. By the time it gets to that point, if the DA says that there's a sufficient amount of probable cause to take it to court, and the jury finds him guilty, or the judge signs off on the forfeiture, that's due process. I wouldn't ever be comfortable with one person having the power enough to say, yes, you can have your money back, or no, you can't have your money back. That's just too much power for one person to have.
Okay, one more question, please.
I'm Donna Fogg, and I live in the Edmond neighborhood, in the Copperfield neighborhood. I live right next door to the leased house that was the biggest drug bust in Edmond. That home is back into the hands of the property owners. They do have a lot of work to do in that house, but it was not confiscated because they are not involved with the drug.
Question.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying.
Yes, ma'am, I agree with that. Yes, ma'am, I agree with that, and nor should it have been confiscated. These drug runners, and human trafficking, pimps, I mean, they're pretty smart in terms of protecting their assets nowadays. They do it out of rental property, they do it out of rented cars now, and we never take the rented cars. Not one time have we ever taken a rented car from anybody. It goes back to Hertz or Allied or whoever's the rental agency is, and that's their purpose for renting homes and renting cars. They're protecting their assets.
One more question from Bobby.
Sheriff, I support you in getting the drug money. What I don't support is that person's perfectly innocent having to pay money to get his own money back. That's what we've got to find a way to do. So what do you think about that?
Good call, buddy. Good My first reaction is by the time it gets through the different levels of critique done by law enforcement and the DA's office, and it gets to the point that it goes to court, the person's not just black and white, innocent or guilty. It's got to be decided by a court or in a court of law. That I can tell you this, and within my own agency it's happened, that we have taken, I can't remember the amount of the cash, it was like 23,000, something like that, from an individual that had a history of drugs, had they didn't have any possession of drugs on them at the time. They had a history, and they couldn't account for the money. The money was taken by law enforcement, given to the DA's office for them to make the determination, because in spite of what the senator says, we don't make that out on the road. We're not the judge and jury out on the road. And our DA, Paul Hess, ADA Paul Hess, said, you know, there's no direct proof this individual derived these funds from drugs. Yes, they have a drug history, but there's no direct proof, and they give the money back. That's the beauty of and it didn't cost the individual anything. It just, if the deputy doesn't know, and there's no way for the deputy to know, they have to make a reasonable assessment based on the physical evidence and both of the person and the vehicle. Then the DA looks at to make sure there's no question of whether or not that they could be innocent, and if so, they deferred on the side of the person and gives the money back. So there's checks and balances.
We appreciate your time and Undersheriff coming to our meeting. Thank you for sharing your testimony. We're over time now. We have some more questions, so I invite you. Can you guys stay for a couple of minutes? Sure. Okay, if you had questions that weren't asked, please see these guys after the meeting. Welcome to do it. And we thank you very much for being at high noon today.
All right. I want to thank y'all for allowing me to be here. I love this country. I love y'all.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
These guys are talking about